St. Lucie County detectives have identified a suspect in a 1983 cold case. Now to a murder mystery that went unsolved for nearly 40 years until today.
That day was my best day in law enforcement, and it was also my worst day.
When a young girl's body was discovered days after going missing nearly 30 years ago, it was determined she had been raped and beaten. According to Western Eco Hope, the suspected killer has now been identified, but they won't be brought to justice. As long as we stay close to home, diverse people can't imagine anything horrible happening to us. But on November 9th, 1983, 11-year-old Laura Ann Weiser was discovered dead after being found sexually abused and killed in Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County, Florida. Without further ado, let's get to the question of what evil creature Laura encountered. Did she recognize her attacker, or was it a stranger? With its magnificent beaches, diversified waterways, and numerous heritage sites, St. Lucie's is a picture postcard representation of how blissful 688-mile-long Florida can be. Beautiful communities in St. Lucie County, where you could raise a family without a care in the world, were formerly thought to exist. But after a terrible crime that took place there, that perception would be altered. Other than Laura, the couple had 4 other children before Laura Ann Weiser was born on May 10, 1972. Her parents were Jose Luis Navarro Weiser and Judy Marie Weiser. Judy looked after their family while Jose served in the U.S. military. Laura was raised in a lovely home in Florida's St. Lucie County. When Laura was 11 years old, brilliant and attractive, she was in the 6th grade at Chester A. Moore Elementary School. And then on Sunday, November 6, 1983, at around 1:30 p.m., everything changed. Many who knew her characterized her as a feisty and outspoken girl. In Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County, Florida, Laura was last seen around Midway Road and Okeechobee Road. The previous evening, she had spent the night at a friend's house and was heading home with a load of clothes in her arms. No one was aware of how the young girl disappeared from her home. When Laura failed to arrive home that afternoon as scheduled, her family was concerned. When they called a friend that she had been with, they learned that Laura had gone hours earlier. When they couldn't find her despite their fast searches, they headed to the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office to report her missing. Unfortunately, at the time, law enforcement did not take reports of missing teenagers seriously until they had been gone for a longer period of time. According to them, teenagers who did not arrive on time frequently played with their friends and simply lost track of time. This appalling approach from law enforcement forced Laura's parents to helplessly wait for their daughter to show up at home, which she never did. A bolo sheet was put out for Laura after the family reported her missing. According to the investigation, she was murdered on the same day she went missing. In a repulsive act of utter brutality, she was sexually raped and strangled to death. People wanted nothing more than to find the killer who targeted this young girl as their victim, at the same time that their small community was shocked by this heinous crime. But it was way too late for any explanation. However, sadly enough for Laura's family, they were disappointed with the local authorities' feeble efforts and could not understand why the police had never even bothered to start a large-scale search for Laura. The detective in charge of the investigation was Paul Taylor, who took a particular interest in the case despite having no personal connection to the deceased girl. In a press conference, Taylor revealed he felt a connection to Laura's story after losing his only son to suicide. In a dream, Taylor even saw his son in Laura, which he took as a sign to continue looking into the case. As part of the investigation, he kept a picture of Laura on his desk and made a commitment to himself to never give up on her. His investigation led him to one of their own, who had never been on the radar but had been a part of the initial investigation. The suspect was none other than the former St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office Deputy James Howard Harrison. Taylor worked his way back in time, speaking to the witnesses as well as the original investigators. He looked more closely at the facts and discovered that he was the last person to have seen Laura alive. Harrison had last seen Laura, and he had also reported the discovery of Laura's body, even though he had not really found it. Detective Taylor found many flaws in the initial inquiry. When 2 guys working at Citrus Grove discovered a young girl's lifeless body, they informed the patrol officer nearby. The man further told him that Harrison asked them to leave right away after they reported the discovery to him, which seems strange. But what was stranger was that no one else wanted to talk to them further after that. Taylor was shocked to learn that his description did not match what was in the case file. ER was shocked to learn that the man's description did not match what was in the case file. Before the other officers joined him for the first time, Harrison spent 20 minutes with Laura's corpse. There appeared to be a suspect in Laura Ann's murder, and it was someone they could never have predicted. As the connection was made, Detective Taylor started to piece the case together. It had always puzzled him why Harrison did not give the girl a lift in any normal situation, even back then when a police officer saw a little girl. Harrison had been accused on numerous occasions of abusing young girls while working at the Bethel Baptist Church in Fort Pierce. Detective Taylor discovered evidence that Harrison had moved items at the crime scene and interfered with the investigation by tampering with the evidence. Despite this murky past, he was never charged. Instead, he was just expelled from the church. In 1984, he also left St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office. He picked up his family and left just 5 months after Laura's murder because no one was keeping an eye on him and he wasn't officially charged. Over the years, he moved around a lot and worked with 10 different law enforcement agencies in his career. Each time he started over, he took advantage of his position and maintained access to the potential victims. Harrison's former co-worker, Sheriff Ken J. Mascara, alleged that when he reported Harrison's inappropriate relations with minors in the late 1970s or early 1980s, nothing was done about it. It was determined by a private DNA lab that the perpetrator of the sexual assault was male, based on the victim's DNA that was recovered from the scene of the crime. Unfortunately, by the time the forensic scientists were able to compare the DNA samples, due to the high degradation, they were unable to achieve a match that was 100% accurate. This was the case, despite the fact that there was no conclusive DNA evidence that could be obtained. In 2021, with the assistance of this new knowledge, Detective Taylor continued to compile evidence that pointed in a certain direction. During a press conference held in February 2022, Chief Deputy Brian Hester stated, "We have developed a probable cause to determine that Harrison abducted, sexually assaulted, and murdered the juvenile victim." This statement was made by Chief Deputy Hester. However, Harrison managed to avoid prosecution for a second time by succumbing to cancer in the year 2008. The investigation led the detectives to conclude that there was sufficient evidence, both direct and circumstantial, to conclude that Harrison was guilty of Laura's death. It was only natural that our family's surprise at how these layers had emerged in this cold case felt like something out of a dream. Sadly enough, none of Laura's parents would witness this day. Her mother died in 2007, and her father passed away not long after that, in 2009. After all this time, you're telling me that you're able to tell us who murdered our little sister, regardless of the conclusion, said Joe Wasser, Laura's older brother. As a result of solving this case, Detective Taylor has gained the gratitude of Laura's surviving family members, which is especially meaningful given how unexpected it was. Ironically, one police officer dedicated all of his efforts towards assisting others, while the other police officer used his position of authority to commit the crime. But at least in the end, the truth came out. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification before leaving. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.